Man, I got a good one for you today. If you know, I am a huge fan of conspiracy theories and ancient history. And today we talk about a little bit of that. You know, the Earth has been chasing the sun through space for, 4 billion years? So we try to unpack a little bit of that, have a really good time. But of course, before we get into all of that, I got a couple things I want to throw at you. If you're new to the show, thanks for jumping in. This is one of two types of podcasts that I do. It's full length, got a guest on here, and they usually go 60 to 90 minutes, and it's more of a conversation, and we get in and talk about everything and anything. On opposite weeks, I go live on Facebook and YouTube, and that's about 10 to 15 minutes of me just yelling at you in this microphone about whatever's on my heart and in my mind. Again, that's live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're listening to this in the audio version, get your ass over and subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, share, and all that good stuff. And, if you do like what you hear and gives you some information, makes you chuckle, tell a friend or 7. I would really appreciate that. All right, and I can't go any further without giving a shout out to my boys over at Live Rishi. These guys make high quality CBD product. You want to relax a little bit? I recommend 1,000 milligram tincture. You got some sore muscles and joints? I use the hell out of the Rishi rub, and my right elbow gives me trouble every once in a while. Put a little bit of that on there, and I put a sleeve on it to get it all nice and warm. Boom, man, no issues. So jump over to those guys, liverishi.com. Use the code word TABLE50. Looking at 50% off your entire order. And that's showing you some love for showing us some love. And of course, everything you need to know about the show is my website, BeRawPodcast.com. Link, of course, is in the show notes. And I got new merch in the store, and I actually opened up an Etsy store. One thing I added is something that I live by 24/7 with everything that I do. And it is practice violence in the gym and kindness everywhere else. Make sure you check that out. All right, man, let's get on to this because Joe and I connected, and I had so much fun talking to this guy. He's a fellow podcaster, and he's deep in the paranormal world, ancient history and stuff. So there's so much to unpack with him. Introduction is useless. So just get on with the show. But one thing, man, he's got this theory about giants back in the day. But as normal, I'm going to let him tell you all about it. Let's get to it. Unearthed. So that was a gem for me for a while. That was, I was calling it my cotton candy watch, right? I mean, just because our schedules, we just don't have a lot of time for TV. Mm-hmm. And we moved into our new house, new house. And my wife was sold on the whole cable package. So we got fucking 500 channels, right? It's like, Jesus, you find out quick that there ain't a damn thing on with 500 channels. No. Holy crap. I spent more time looking for shit. And then I ended up falling back to the stuff I was watching before we had all that. But anyway, I found Unearthed, and I just found that extremely entertaining. I love that kind of shit to begin with. Yeah. But then the way they had the CGI and the diagrams and all that, amazing, dude. I really enjoyed that show.
It's a true story. The history we've been told have all been lies.
100%. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And well, shit, we're still doing it now. Not to get too, I don't want to get political, but
the history of the world and of the United States, and not politically, but actually physically, of the people that used to live here, the different races, the different cultures, even with technology, it's all pretty much lies that they're telling us in school. Yeah. Or I shouldn't say lies. They're skewing it so that it is better, because like the Smithsonian says, they believe that there was nobody here before Columbus. So that's why I call it pre-Columbian. But yet I've proved 100 times that there have been civilizations, and I believe that civilizations that were here before us actually have better technology than we do.
Oh man, dude, you're reading my mind, dude. So I thought, so I have this theory that, and I've seen it all over the internet, and of course you start to go down that that rabbit hole and you end up in a echo chamber, right? So then you start to really believe that shit. And I think there was crazy technology, shit that we can't even comprehend at this point. And then there was some cataclysmic, extreme, what do you want to call it? Like they just event, just wiped everything out, right? And then we're starting all over again.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was.
Because you look at the technology. Okay. Simple thing. Okay. In Egypt, when you go to Egypt, you look at the different things that they've built, and you look at some of them and they actually have like scoop marks where it looks like they took a tool and scooped the stone instead of chiseling it. When you go to Egypt, one of the things they do is there's a section where they give you this big black rock and they say, this is how they actually made the pyramids and everything. They took this rock and they hit it against the other stone and chipped it away. Yes, that works. But to make 1 foot would take 30 to 40 years of constant hitting with the rock.
Right.
No. I see it as, I looked at the scoop marks and it looks like a machine just went up to the rock and just scooped it, because it's actually not straight down. There's like a curve to it to where there would be on an arm or something.
Yeah, like a backhoe.
Yeah. And you look at the smoothness of the stones. And I mean, some of the stones I've seen had mirror images in them. You could actually see yourself in the stones. And that's technology we have today where we use diamond polishing and stuff.
Right.
And they're saying that they just use a rock and hit it, and that's how they made all this stuff.
Well, I mean, it's incredible. Okay, so we'll stick to the pyramids. I got another thing that I found, but the precision that pyramid, like the big pyramid, and in these other shows like Unearthed, you found that the history of pyramids is completely fascinating. We could talk for days on that stuff, right? I mean, it's just incredibly fascinating. But everybody knows the Great Pyramid, right? So here you go. You got this gigantic thing, but the precision of it. So now going off your rock theory, right? Everybody's like, oh, they use chisels and rocks. Well, here you got a 17-ton stone and two of them put next to one another where you can't even put a piece of paper through it.
Exactly.
But then look at the height of it, right? Of the pyramid. If you're off by what? A 24th of an inch, by the time you get to the top, you're fucked, right?
Yeah.
How does
the points
that work?
Don't go like this, they go like that.
Yeah, right. So how do you do that with a rock and with a hammer and a chisel? It's hard. It's hard for me to swallow that stuff when somebody says it.
I've got some weird stuff we'll talk about in a little bit that kind of go back to the pyramid too. And it'll blow your mind. But yeah, just the precision of the engineering and the age of the engineering. That's another thing is like the Sphinx. I believe that the Sphinx is a lot older than the pyramids themselves.
Right. Wasn't that kind of recent where they figured that out because of they unearthed what's under it, right? Am I right on that one?
When they first found it back in whatever year, it was still covered with sand. And which is common because it is in the desert and the sand blows and it finally fills in everything. It's not like, I mean, they didn't bury it on purpose. It just over time buried itself. But when they dug it out, they found that the walls that surround it, because it's actually sitting down in a little like a little square cutout, basically. But the walls of it have erosion on it that only can happen from water. And a lot of water over time wearing away at this. It's like a waterfall that wears away. And that time is years of erosion. Now, 12,000 years ago, there was a meteor that hit the earth and caused a flood. Okay, that's one of the theories. There's other theories that the ice dam broke and all that, but it with looking at research of the nanodiamonds and all that kind of stuff and shock quartz and stuff, I feel that it was a asteroid or a meteor that hit the Earth that melted the ice caps, which caused the flood 12,000 years ago.
Okay.
But if you look at the Sphinx, the wear marks on the Sphinx are not from wind, they're from water. And there wasn't water there for, I'm just going to throw out the number 12,000 years. So they believe that the Sphinx is a hell of a lot older than that whole Giza plateau.
Yeah, but wasn't that whole plateau surrounded by water, had water in it even 12,000 years ago, like when the pyramids were around?
Right? I'm not sure. That's okay. I'm not sure on that. But I do know that the wear marks on it show wear by water, not by wind.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Sphinx is way older than the pyramids because I've seen something on it.
But that's not the only one. There's other ones that they found around, even in the Giza Plateau area or around there. They found others, but they weren't as big. So it wasn't that they said, well, those were made as a copy of that one,
Yeah, of course. Now, the thing is, though, going back to the pyramids and all that, look at South America and down in the jungle. And how about the ones, God, what's that thing that they fly over? It's making a big deal about it now where they fly over the Amazon and they have like what do they call it?
The
radar.
Lines.
No, LiDAR or radar or something that they.
Oh, that. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. And LiDAR.
Mm-hmm. And they can see all that stuff. That's incredible, right? But hold on a second, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm all excited. But the South America, am I mistaken that they believe that that's older than the pyramids?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, that's something I don't know either. That's one thing I haven't looked at that much, but from talking to different people, I believe so.
Yeah. And talking about precision and stuff, there's a couple things. The one I think is in Ethiopia, but they found they're like down south. It is either in Amazon, it's in the jungle, right? So it's either Amazon or down in South America. They found a cave, right? So they go in this cave, and it's this mammoth fucking like inside of a church, like huge, many stories tall, super long. Then they figure out that it's all carved out of the rock. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't build stuff. They just carved it all out of rock as they went. Right.
Yeah.
So that alone, you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. How does this happen? Right. So I'm watching and I'm thinking this is great. And then they're like, hey, we found this thing above the front door. And on a certain day, certain time and all that, the light shines in it and hits this one spot, like a temple and stuff, that's common. It seems to be common in that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But then right across the valley, they find another one that's identical to that one. Shape, size, everything. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Wait a minute. You had me at this huge thing and you carve it all out of rock. But then to make a complete mirror, and it made me think of it when you said the mirror image in a rock, to make a complete mirror image of this huge, and I'm not talking the size of my basement, because back then everything was huge, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to totally create that to a millimeter image of the one across the, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Ain't no fucking way. Okay, so it's either aliens or what we talked about before, our species or some species was here long before with technology that we have no idea about.
And if you look at that cave that you're talking about, that man-made cave, the walls have those same scoop marks in it that they find.
No shit. And I think it's Ethiopia where, like, you look across the landscape and you can't see nothing; it's all flat. But as you go along down in the rock, these buildings are carved out of the rock, and it's all a single piece of rock, even the inside and everything. It's like, I don't.
Yeah,
we probably couldn't do that today.
No, They're just giant churches that are buried, and there's a name for them, but I don't remember what the name is. But there's also one that's actually now some of those. No, maybe I'm talking something different. I'm thinking something different. But when you said that in Asia, I believe it is. Oh no, India. They have these temples that are built sort of like pyramids, but they're not pyramids. They're just built big, and then they get smaller as they go up. And there's one that's actually upside down that's built down into the ground. And they thought that it was a cistern to keep water in until they started digging a little more and found rooms and all that. And it's an exact match to the ones that are up above ground, but it's flipped over and it's below ground. And they said that that's the opposite, meaning that it's the one for going to hell or something like that.
Oh,
and
see,
I don't remember enough of it, but when you said that, that popped in my mind.
Oh, my thought went directly to, it's like a cookie cutter, like a shape. They fill that in and then flip it over, and boom, look, you got a fucking pyramid.
Yeah.
But it's just, and then it was another pyramid. It was on that show Unearthed, and the lady went in the pyramid. Dude, I got claustrophobic watching it. It was crazy, right? And then they get into the main chamber, and of course they try to fool and put fake chambers and all that for grave robbers. Of course they never work, but thieves will always figure it out, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, desperation can go a long way when you're looking for that kind of shit, because it's in there, right? It's got to be somewhere.
And there's nobody knowing that you're in there, so you got all the time in the world.
Right. And it's incredible, the architecture, right? So here we are building this huge structure. Even I called them the little ones that you hear about, they're still unbelievably massive. They're out in the middle of the desert. So when on TV, when you're watching on TV, you fly over it, they fly over, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Well, go put my house next to it.
Yeah.
To give it an idea of scale, right? I mean, it's crazy, unbelievable. And then they're like, the quarry is 120 miles away. I'm like, what the fuck?
And the blocks, one block is the size of my house. And they say, they just moved it, Yeah,
they just dragged it with a bunch of people on rolling timber.
Get
the fuck.
Yeah.
Took
some trees to cut them down and roll them.
Yeah, that's why there's no trees, because they all cut them down anyway.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on that, where something that we have no idea, no understanding of, created that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think even how desensitized we are nowadays, right? Because horror movies and ghost movies and all that shit, we're pretty desensitized, right? So if I saw a transformer walking down the road, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. It would just, because you're like, oh, somebody built something and there it is. Even how desensitized we are, I believe if tomorrow that technology showed up, we would just it'd blow our mind. I don't think we could comprehend it. I don't think we could even. No. Yeah, that's my theory on that stuff.
Drills. They had drills. There's actual holes in like Tehuacan and Pumapuco. They're drill holes that actually they looked in and they could actually see the marks from the tooling. And they were saying, oh, they just put sand in and turned it. And I'm like, no, there's tooling marks,
I saw, what's your thoughts on Ancient Aliens? That show?
The show or the truth?
The show. Oh, no, yeah. We'll get to the truth. No, the show, dude, the show.
It's entertainment.
That's,
I'm in the entertainment world. I know, probably 85% of the people that are on the TV shows, I know them personally. They don't call me on the phone or nothing, but we meet up every once a year up in Michigan. We all hang out. And you got to remember that those shows are entertainment. They want you to come back every week. So they're going to put stuff in there. And Ancient Aliens, the big thing about that show is they'll interview somebody, but they'll edit it so that
Oh yeah.
they're saying certain things. And you notice that they never say, um, they'll go like ancient alien believers believe that, they never say they were there. They always say they believe that and stuff like that. But the thing is, it's all based on science and that we have looked at. They may skew it a certain way for entertainment, but a lot of that stuff is all true stuff, like the Nazca lines, like the carvings that they see in Egypt of a spaceship and a helicopter and a boat and stuff like that. Those like things are there.
Or like a guy that looks like he's in a suit, like a space suit or something.
And
yeah, sure.
That one right there. I mean, we were talking about different civilizations all over the world having the same carvings.
Oh, that's
even though they never talk to each other. That one right there, where it looks like there's a guy sitting in a spaceship, wearing a suit, holding controls, flames coming out of the bottom of it, was found all over. I mean, there's like 6 different pictures from different areas of the world that same carving is in.
Now, would that be an alien, or would that be the advanced civilization that was
I think it's
out?
Advanced civilization that they saw, so they carved it.
Well,
because
sure. I mean,
there's a lot. I mean, it's a good example is back during the war, there was an island that was a desert island with inhabitants on it, and our government used that as a landing strip, like a halfway point or whatever for the planes. Yeah, the inhabitants on there saw these people coming in these flying machines, and
they drew them, right?
They drew them, and they also made effigies out of grass and trees and that looked like airplanes. So their belief was that if they make these effigies, that means that the gods that came down in the flying machines will come back.
Wait a minute.
You know what I mean?
Wait a minute.
They didn't.
Hold on. I thought there was only one God.
No. What I'm saying is,
I know. I just had to throw that out there.
Hey, don't mess with her, okay?
Touche, dude. Touche.
But they never saw these flying machines before, and these strange white people came in these flying machines that made a lot of noise, and they thought that they were gods because they came in on these things. And I'm thinking that back in the day, I think it was a Tuesday, the Aztecs and everything saw these spaceships and just drew or carved out what they saw. I don't know. Same thing with cave drawings,
Sure. And I mean, you have that example of, back in the day where we're, us recently were landed and they were drawing what they saw, because they've never seen that. Right.
Yeah.
So I got thinking about it, the same theory. I've seen shows where they're like, hey, look, this cave drawing, this carving is exactly the same in South America as in Egypt and China and, up in Russia, whatever, all over the place. And I'm like, okay, again, could it be aliens or could it be the advanced civilization that's gone?
Yeah.
So just to make the conversation a little easier, this advanced civilization lived in England.
Yeah.
Well, these other civilizations are down in South America and down in the desert, in Egypt. Well, there's no way for them to get to England, right? I mean, I'm just trying to make a example here, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the exact situation that you just brought up back from the 20s or whatever, when we landed and these natives were like, what the hell is that? Ooh, in the flying machine. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
So how easy could that be? And then an asteroid came and hit and
reset. What's going to be left? I mean, if you have, like, we were just talking about this a couple of days ago. What if, and I think there was a TV show on it, but what if our civilization vanished right now, today? Everybody on the earth, it could be a thing where everybody gets sick or just doesn't reproduce. So the we'd all die off.
Oh, I like
What's
that.
the only thing that is going to be left? Because everything's going to basically rust and melt away over time.
And
The
if you
only
don't
thing
have,
that's going to be left is stone.
right, and if you don't have power, you can't fire up a laptop and look at pictures on a laptop.
Yeah. And if you don't have power, you're going to have things breaking down and basically just rotting away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, so I had for the longest time on my show, when especially I'd be talking to people like you about stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you, okay, so you ever see Blade Runner, the old movie, right?
I think so.
Where it's like based in the future and everything's technology, like
Yeah.
everything's technology.
Mm-hmm.
And then have you ever seen The Postman with Kevin Costner?
That I haven't. No.
Okay, so it's a post-apocalyptic movie, and it's basically like there's no power or anything anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's living like it's 1850, basically.
Yeah.
Everybody lives in hamlets. They make their own clothes. Everything's fenced up. They don't let strangers in, that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think that how do you think if there was a apocalyptic event,
Mm-hmm.
do you think we would veer more toward Blade Runner or more toward Postman?
I think it would start out as a Blade Runner situation where everybody's fighting for themselves because, I mean, the pandemic's a great example.
I was just gonna say
Toilet paper. I mean, come on. Are we ready for aliens to show up when we have a pandemic and everybody gets toilet paper? But
yeah, right.
No, I think everybody's going to fend for themselves. They're going to probably fight for themselves or fight for their family to get more food and steal it from others. But eventually it'll turn into, well, we don't have technology anymore, so we have to start over and we have to start growing our own food and becoming tight-knit communities and stuff. And so I think it'll be a Blade Runner style that morphs into the Postman.
Okay, I like that.
Because it's common sense that we would have to start becoming communities again and working together to save everybody, because one person can't save themselves if everybody else is coming after them.
Well, that, and we're a communicative species anyway, right? We like to be in communities and groups. So I had this guest on a long time ago. Loved it, man. He's an expert on post-apocalyptic scenarios. Worked for NASA.
Okay.
Did all this shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, in his opinion, what's going to bring mankind to his knees is a bacteria like strep throat.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yep, and he said the reason for that is bacteria is. So a virus, if we come up with an antibody for a virus, that virus kills it, that's it, right? With bacteria, we come up with an antibody, and that's like strep throat. Well, that antibody that strep throat develops to fight off ours, what we give it, right? Passes along to other bacteria. Yeah. So now Gangrene,
and they learn and grow.
And they learn and grow and they become, so now it's going to be hard to deal with any bacteria. So a simple bacteria is going to wipe out like 40% of the population, right? And this is his theory. This is his theory.
Yeah.
And then what'll happen, I asked the same question. And he said it'll start like you did. It's great that you said, it's fun that how you said. He goes, that's how it'll start. But then what'll happen is, almost like you said, the major cities, or what becomes a major city, so take like Seattle or Denver, right? They'll have technology and power, but it's not going to be huge because there's not going to be enough people with the knowledge. One, there's not going to be that many people. Then there's not going to be that many people with the knowledge to do it, right? And then on the outskirts will be like little hamlets with no power, and they live like it's 1850. That's how he thinks it'll evolve. Yeah. So it's cool how you did. How you said it was pretty close to what he said. I mean, he's a self-proclaimed expert, and that's what he worked on in NASA and all that stuff. So, and he said NASA, for PR reasons, makes space look all fascinating and cool, right? Yeah. He's like, space is a scary fucking place. He goes, you don't want to be in space.
So, all those pictures we see of nebula and star clusters and all that stuff, they always show them in nice, beautiful colors and all that. It's like, they're not like that. That's just the colors of the chemicals, or the color signature of the chemicals that they find. And a lot of it is painted, I'm not, you know what I mean? They're all colored.
Yeah.
Because, we love things that sparkle, and we love fancy stuff and squirrels. So, that's how it is.
Well, that's why peeler bars are so popular, right? We like things that sparkle. But so going back to aliens, what's his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Of course, you know the guy. Know of him, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a fan. I like him. He's got his little stick, right? I believe that he's unbelievably intelligent. So, but then he's got his little stick to make his little performance and do his, which I enjoy his entertainment. I do enjoy his entertainment. So my wife works at a performance art center in Newark, and he was coming. I said, man, that'd be great. Let's do a whole night. We'll go to dinner and then go watch him and stuff. But speaking of aliens, he goes, let's talk about intelligence and that kind of thing. He goes, so what's the closest mammal to us? Chimps, right? Some people are yelling out horse and whale, and I'm like, what?
Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm like sitting there going,
dolphins are jerks then.
Yeah. But so he goes, all right, so chimps, closest thing to a man. He goes, let me show you this. He goes, here's an example that they did, an experiment. They brought a chimp into a room and had bananas on the ceiling, and there's boxes all over the room. The chimp realized he couldn't get to the bananas, and it took him a minute. He figured it out. He stacks all the boxes up, and you get the bananas.
Yeah.
The researchers at the time thought this was astronomical. This is amazing. Look what this chimp did, right? So they're we're 1% off, or one chromosome off, or something.
One chromosome off.
Right. He goes, so look what we do. Neurosurgeon, aircraft pilot, and he goes into that kind of thing. He goes, now imagine when aliens show up. He goes, I didn't say if, I said when. I was like, I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And he goes, imagine if they're one chromosome off to us.
Yeah.
Joe, that blew my fucking mind. He didn't even have to, before he started to elaborate, I went, and then he made a joke about it, but he's like, the little alien comes home from school, from second grade. He's like, Mom, look, I wrote a symphony today, like stuff that we think is astronomically amazing. They're second graders doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So speaking of, obviously space travel is, to us, is unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
Right. To go light years and all that bullshit. But of course, there's probably some technology out there we don't know about.
Exactly.
But to travel that length of time, space, distance, whatever you want to call it, what this one guy called them generational ships. So if we had to do it, we would have to build a spaceship. Me and you get on there, knowing that we ain't never coming back.
Yeah.
And we bring our wife with us. We have kids. They have kids. They have kids. They have kids. Boom. Right? And 10 generations later, you end up somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he said, that's the only way. But he goes, then the problem is we can't get build a car to last more than, X amount of years. How are you going to build a ship that's supposed to last, 500 years, right?
Yeah. So, they got to repair it on the go.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So
a great example is Proxima Centauri B. Studies are showing that Proxima Centauri B is a great candidate for a planet that has life on it. And I'm not talking just bacteria, I'm talking like people life. It's only four light years away. And you think, well, that's four light years. That ain't nothing. It would take the technology we have right now would take us 73,000 years to get there.
No shit. Oh, I didn't ever do that
speeds
math.
we're traveling right now. So when you talk about generational ships, you're talking about maybe centennial ships or something, or even more than that.
Oh my God. So 73,000 years to go 4 light years.
Yeah. That's how long it would take us to get to Proxima Centauri B. And, you know, I mean, 4 light years, you think, oh, heck, that ain't nothing. But we've been broadcasting for 200 years, basically, our radio waves that we know of. You know, we've been broadcasting for around 200 years.
All right.
So if you go on the Google and look up
the Google
how far our radio transmissions have gone in our solar system, it is just a tiny little dot.
Yeah, sure.
So that's 200,000 light years. Now, Proxima Centauri B is only 4 light years away, but it takes us that long to get there. So if we wanted to travel through our solar system, there's no way we could ever travel that far, even if, because 4 light years is only 73,000 years, you know, 200 light years would be, you know, times whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So speaking of that, I think we have a fascination with it because of Star Wars and Star Trek and warp speed. And we got there in 6 months, you know, whatever. Right. But I can't remember who I was listening to, and they're like, hey man, we're pumping out all these waves and radio waves from the earth. Mm-hmm. How come nobody hears us?
Well, that's what I mean.
Okay. Well,
we've only been broadcasting for 200 years, and 200 light years is not that far.
Right. And so, but I understand that part. Mm-hmm. But what this guy said was, look how small the earth is. Like if you're looking at the earth from Saturn, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's this little tiny, not even a pinhead against the sun.
Yeah.
Right. So he goes, we're pumping out these radio waves and these signals going, hey man, how come nobody hears us? He goes, does anybody think about that fucking ginormous ball of fire that's behind us making all this noise?
Yeah.
And the guy goes, I go, never thought about that. He goes, do you actually know how much noise the sun makes? And you think your little radio wave is somebody's going to hear that. And it was just a cool perspective to think about. You know, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But think about how much noise you think that the sun makes up there burning. You know,
and think of this too, is, you know, we're just a tiny little dot. Okay. And how do they even, one, know we're here? And two, why would they come that far to see us when we're just a little dot? Good example of it is, when was the last time you went to Huntington Beach and picked up that one little piece of sand because it was interesting?
And you went, check that out.
You know what I mean? It's like,
no, that's a great example.
Sitting where we are now. You're in New Jersey, right?
Yes, sir.
Or not? Yeah. And I'm in Toledo. And Huntington Beach is 1,000 miles or whatever that way, you know, in California.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to look at it as not just the state of California, not just the city of Huntington Beach, not even the beach itself, but that one little speck of sand sitting on that beach is us to the rest of the universe.
I like that. That's a cool comparison, right? And then, because there's just so much out there. They would have to randomly come upon us and be like, "Oh, look at that!"
Yeah.
And then they see what we got going on here, and they're like, "Fucking lock the door. Let's get out of here, bro."
Yeah. Everybody says, "Oh, what if the aliens show up and they're violent?" Hello. They lock the doors when they fly past. you know?
Yeah. The shit, we'd be the violent ones. The first thing we'd try to do is try to kill them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and the other problem, I mean, the other thing that we don't, I guess I never thought of either was our soft little pudgy bodies. We can't fling these out in space at light years at a time and not have gravity. Well, you got fake gravity. Come on, dude, your body, look at these astronauts that go up for a year. Look what they do. Imagine spending your whole life of 60 years in space. And then what does contraception look like in fake gravity? How does my wife's body gonna raise a kid, build a kid inside her with fake, atmosphere?
With zero gravity.
Yeah.
So it's looking in her belly and it floating around like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't like gravity for obvious reasons, but obviously we need it, right? And then, how old the Earth is and the universe and how big the universe, it's just you can't comprehend it in a serious way, right? I don't think you could. You can sit here and imagine it and go, oh yeah, that's cool. Look, there's Saturn and there's Mars. And it's like, dude, you complained about traveling to the grocery store for 45 minutes. What the hell you think you're going to do for?
Imagine getting into a ship and saying, like you said earlier,
you're never
back. Off the ship. Your grandkids are never going to get off the ship. Your great-great-grandkids are never going to get off the ship.
Yeah. I mean,
and what happens if everybody on the ship starts to fight, or one person gets sick?
Yeah. You could do all these tests, all these crazy tests like they do with astronauts, to make sure they're not going to come down with the flu and all that good stuff. But you don't have a DNA. You can't crack into the DNA that all of a sudden I'm carrying something in 20 years on the ship, I get contagious and kill everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an undertaking, man.
That's why I believe that the alien ships, and now we're going to go into some woo-woo here.
I love woo-woo, dude. Do I need to wait a minute? Hold on. Do I got to get my tinfoil hat?
Heck yeah, put it on.
Oh yeah, my man.
Okay, so in our little circle of friends, we talk about the Greys.
Oh yeah, okay. I like the Greys.
The Greys are the one alien. I mean, there's a bunch of aliens that people see, like the reptilians and all that kind of stuff. But first contact is always the Greys. All right, even in abductions and everything, is first contact is the small Greys. So think about how we explore right now. We've only been to the moon.
Okay. Allegedly.
Yeah. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
We send probes. Okay. We don't send humans because you have to feed humans. You have to get rid of their waste. You have to breathe. You got to everything. We send probes. Now, we have been talking and we believe that the Greys are biological probes that are sent here first, because it makes sense. They don't have to feed them because they got the small mouths. They have no reproductive organs.
Sure.
They have big eyes, which they can collect a lot of light. A lot of people have claimed to kill Greys, and it didn't bother the rest of them. They were just like, okay, we keep going,
Well, wouldn't it be like I've had the same thought, right? Wouldn't it be like an ant colony or a bee colony? It's like the greater, they're doing everything for the greater, the quote unquote colony, right? Yeah. So here I'm doing this, and you and I are Greys. You get wiped out, and I just keep going because I'm doing this. He's gone, no problem. I'm doing this for the colony, quote, whatever you want to call it.
But I think that the aliens, like the Nordics, the reptilians, the tall Greys, they all go to their Dollar General store and buy their little Greys and put them on the ship and send them out because, one, they're coming to the human planet, which is very violent, and they get killed right away. So why would they send themselves first? But also, it makes sense because they can send out the Greys. into the universe, and they're expandable, or not expandable, expendable, because and you don't have to feed them, you don't have to reproduction, all that stuff. So I mean, we don't know. This is all speculation, but looking at different things, we're saying the grays to me would be biological probes that they send out, because that's what we're doing. We're sending probes out. We've been past Pluto. Right now Voyager 1 and 2 are way out there. We don't send humans. We send the probes. And I believe that that's what the aliens would do first, because one, they want to fly past the planet and look at it to see what it's all about and learn. And then later send, the other ones, whether it be the gray or the reptilians or whatever.
Dude, I don't think that's far-fetched at all. Or what were you say, Wookiee, or what? I can't remember the word. Yeah, woo. I don't, because obviously in a civilization like that, we would be looking at it through our eyes, knowing that what we know. Right? But if they're a civilization that's 1 million years old, what are we going to look like if we get to our, I don't think that's far-fetched at all. Like you said, like the Dollar General. Here we go. Hey, baby, how many you want to send? What do we got to do? Well, let's do 4. They're on sale. Let's get 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then send them out. Dude, I would do that. Right? I mean, look at, on a smaller scale, that somebody might be able to, that they don't think is so crazy. A drone. Look how popular drones have gotten.
Yeah.
So now you sit in your backyard, and you throw that drone up in the air. Yeah. Now you're exploring 2 neighborhoods over, and nobody knows where you're operating that from.
Yeah.
Same concept, dude. You just got to make it as big as the universe.
We're doing it on Mars right now.
Oh,
there's a helicopter on Mars.
Yeah. So it's,
we're doing it.
Yeah. So what is it to say that from 200 years from now, that we all are half robotic and half human, and we come up with some incubator where we can build this little 4-foot, quote unquote, person that can fly a drone, basically, right? Fly a drone to Saturn.
Yeah. A self-contained drone that'll fly itself.
Yeah, and they operate. Well, they operate it. They know what to do. They do it, so and they can troubleshoot, right? So it's troubleshooting real time, and they know that they're not coming back or whatever it may be, right? So shit, dude, I could totally see that. I think that's. I mean, look at what we do now. Like you said, Mars, but even on Earth, we send people to do things, or they do it on their own, but exploration, right? It's just another way of exploration on the long term, right? So maybe this alien species that's 400 light years away, okay, we're going to take all these little drones, live drones, put them in all these spaceships, send them, knowing, if I do that, knowing that I'm never going to know what they send back, because I'll be able to touch base with them while I'm alive.
Yeah.
So say I'm alive for 200 years. So for 200 years, I'm collecting information. They're going. I die. Now my kids are collecting the information. Now they're 400, 500, 600 years away. Right. So I could totally see that. The grays that we see here on Earth, they could have launched 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. We don't know.
You don't know that, to travel that distance, right?
And the thing is, now I might go off on another tangent here, but the thing is, you look at cave drawings that are from 600,000-700,000 years old that have drawings of grays on them. Same thing, short, little mouth, big eyes, all that.
Yep.
So they may have been here 1,000 years ago, and they're still the same model because that model works good.
Gen 1 and 2, right?
Yeah. Or like you said, different times they were sent out, and maybe they flew at different speeds, so they got here sooner or later or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And because that experiment, I'm going to send out 2 ships, one at this speed, one at this speed, and I'm going to collect the data, the different speeds. Now, what that's doing is I'm going to, I'm going off on a thing because I love this shit, is I'm doing this. So I'm collecting data. That means that I'm a gray, like way in some other universe, right? And I'm sending out these drones, and of course, they're all over the universe, collecting data so that my great grandkids have this data and maybe they can physically travel, right? So it's cumulative information. We do it all the time, right? We sit here and just collect data and collect data and collect data and collect data. Okay, so if we want to travel 200 light years, the most efficient way is to travel at this speed, and that kind of thing, because our experiment was they went this fast and shit broke down faster, whatever it may be. I mean, you could, Oh yeah, that's good stuff right there.
I mean, we've already done that. We went to Pluto, and when the rocket was shot off to go to Pluto was what, 20 years ago or so?
Oh,
that rocket went up, and it just kept going and going, and they just did their thing, and then they were like, okay, it's coming up on the date that it's going to pass Pluto. We better turn all the machines back on. So we've done that where we send out ships and they travel, and we just let them go until they reach their destination. Then those people, now obviously it's still the same people that shot it off, but let's say it was farther, and they'd say to their kids, okay, on this date, turn this machine back on because the ship will be there. Yeah,
100%. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And the whole theory that we have to bring it back on Earth is you plant a seed for a tree knowing that I'll never sit under the shade.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a generational thing. I could totally see that. Aliens, dude.
All right.
And then, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your alien stuff.
I was just going to say the alien stuff I'll finish with, and we'll move on, is how fucking narcissistic you got to be thinking we're the only thing alive in the universe.
Oh yeah. I mean,
can't believe it. There's somebody's like, there's no way there's aliens. What?
In 1984, we found our first exoplanet. And an exoplanet, for your listener, is a planet outside of our universe. Okay, so we found the first one in 1984. And I don't know the name of it, but we found that. Since then, and just recently in the last 2 years or more, we've realized that almost every single star has planets around it, at least one planet. Most stars have several planets around them. And, you look at the Drake equation and stuff like that, but we found that every single star, you look up in the universe, up in the sky, and every single dot has at least 1 to 5 or so planets spinning around it. Now, the probability of those planets being in the habitable zone for life that we can think of, and I mean, life could be anything, but just the planets in the habitable zone to have humans on it, have our species humans on it, you're looking at over 1 billion planets. So what's the possibility that there are planets up there with people walking around all them that kind of look like us? Because you got to think about this too. In order for us to survive, we have to look like we do. We have to have thumbs. We have to have eyes that we can see. We have to have, our shape might be different depending on, is the planet more gravity? So we'd be fatter, less gravity, we'd be skinnier. Stuff like that.
Yeah, but hotter, taller.
And that's where another thing too, like Enrique Fermi was sitting at the dinner table one night, and he just blurted out, "Where are they?" And everybody's like, "Who?" He's like, "The aliens. Where are the aliens?" And they started to think about why they wouldn't be here. We talked about earlier, we're just a tiny little speck in the speck of our sun is even just a tiny little speck. But there could be planets out there with life on it that are water planets. They never see, the outside of their water. They could be a planet of people that are too heavy to get off their planet. They could be a planet of people that don't care to get off their planet, that don't care about exploring. There's so many different things and reasons why they wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and I mean, think about our planet back in the Neanderthal days. You think that fucking dude was thinking about going to the moon?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, dude. What do you got, man? I can talk about aliens all day. So.
Let's switch gears. We talked about pyramids, and we talked about ancient civilizations earlier.
Yep.
When you mentioned Newark, it popped in my mind. One of the studies that I'm doing right now is the giants. Okay.
Oh, man.
Giants that roam the earth. Now, I want to show you something.
And you're not talking about the fucking monster that goes to my local gym, dude, right? You're talking about...
No. I want to show you this. Okay. Let me see. Let me find the camera. Okay. See that? See the writing on it? It's kind of hard to see in the camera, and even though I'm moving the wrong way. And for your listener, I'm holding up a stone that looks like a V, and it's got a little thing on the top, and this is called the keystone. Okay. And the reason they call it the keystone, because obviously it looks like the top of an arch.
Yep.
And there's carvings in it. Okay.
Okay.
So back in 1880, David Wyrick was traveling around Newark, Ohio. So we're talking about Ohio here. He was traveling around Newark, Ohio, and he was an archaeologist. He liked digging into things and finding out about history. Now, in Newark, Ohio, Newark, Ohio is known for the Indian mounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
I've heard of those.
In the United States, there was over 10,000 mounds that they know of in the United States alone. Now we're talking also, there's mounds all over the world, but so David Wyrick was looking into the ancient history, and he was digging into one of the mounds in Newark, Ohio, and he found this stone called the keystone, and it's got writing on it, and he can't figure out. My camera's kind of out of focus, but there's writing on it.
Dude,
and he's like,
wow. Send me a picture of that when we've done.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
And he figured out that this is Hebrew writing. Okay.
All right.
And going back to the TV show we were talking about earlier, they talk about this a lot too, is there's Hebrew writing on this stone, and he found this in Ohio. Now, why is there Hebrew writing in Ohio? And why are there so many burial mounds that have giant skeletons buried in them? Okay. So we talk about that. We think about that. My belief is that the lost tribe of the Israelites came over to the United States, and some of them settled in Ohio. And we're not talking the actual tribes that left Israel, but we're talking their kids and their grandkids settled here because the time is wrong. So David Wyrick found this, and they call it the Newark Holy Stone. Okay, and I'll send you links to them, and I'll send you pictures. So he was real intrigued. And he was going around Newark looking at all the different mounds. And I've been there many, many times. I've traveled the world looking at mounds and stuff. But he was digging around. He's like, man, there's got to be more. And there was a mound that they started to take down because they needed the rocks. And it was the only mound in the United States that they found that was full of rocks. I mean, it was a mound made of big boulders. Mm-hmm. So this was different. Okay, it's the Great Stone Mound. It took over 10,000 cartloads of stones out to tear this mound down.
What year were they doing this then?
It's around the 1800s.
Okay,
so when you look at a map of Newark, Ohio, you'll notice a big lake next to it. And what that is a reservoir, and they wanted to make this bigger, so they took all these stones off the mound and made the wall for the reservoir. So the stones are still there. And they took the stones away, and David Wyrick was like, man, that's different. It's not like any other mound. So it's got to be something special. So him and a few guys went back to this mound after they took the stones away, and they noticed that it had clay on the bottom of it. So it had like a clay basin. So he started digging into it, and he found a coffin. Okay. Native Americans didn't bury their loved ones in coffins. Mm. The coffin was big. Like
okay,
12.
so How big? How big we
like
talking?
12 foot.
Okay.
So he found a giant, and it had copper bracelets on it and a copper breastplate, which could have been Native American. They did that too, but he also had a shroud over him. Okay.
12-foot
And
tall dude.
yeah. And when you're buried, like when they find burials of shrouds, that's more of Israelite type stuff. So he was like, there's something wrong about this. There's a giant skeleton here. And there's two stories. One is that he found another little coffin about 6 inches by 3 inches made of stone. Okay.
All right.
There's two stories. One story says that he found it, the giant was holding it. And the other story was that it was under the giant. So who knows? But anyways, he found this other one. And when he picked it up, it rattled. So he knew there was something inside of it. And there was no carvings on the outside. It was just a stone, little stone thing. So he rattled it. And there's other stories that one of his workers blew on it, broke apart, or they broke it apart. So inside of it, they found this. Okay, let me hold it up to the camera. I know your listeners can't see it, so I'll describe it. But he found this. This is what's called the Decalogue stone. And if you notice, all around it is writing.
Yep.
So,
and what's that picture on the front supposed to be?
That's a carving, and I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
And I'll send you pictures so that you can put on your website and everything.
Yep.
But this is called the Decalogue stone. So you have the Newark Holy Stones that he found.
So between the keystone and that one, those are the holy stones.
These are called the Newark Holy Stones.
Okay.
Now the originals, the real ones, these obviously are not the real ones. These are copies I bought at the museum. But the real ones I have seen, I've never touched them because they're in a case and they, you can't touch them. But the writing around the sides is old style block Hebrew writing. And they figured out that it's the 10 Commandments. And right here, I know your listener can't see it, but right above the carving, it says Moshe, which is Moses.
Oh, over the head, right?
Yep.
Okay.
In Ohio, in the 1800s, David Royrich found this stone that has Moses carved on it. And in old style block Hebrew writing is the 10 Commandments that are all around it. Some people say that they're fakes, but there's a lot of scholars that looked at the original holy stones and they say they're not. Now, the thing is, we look at this and we think, okay, it's just one stone with Hebrew writing on it. How does that prove that the Israelites were here? Well, it doesn't. But we found other things all over Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, Michigan. They're finding stones, and on the national, or what do we call it, the National Unearthed or whatever, he did an episode on there too where he followed the stones, and they found in the woods these stones with carvings with Hebrew writing on them that led him to different things. But in Ohio, we have a lot of mounds. And down in Fayette, Ohio, there was a mound. And there's two different kinds of mounds. You have the burial mounds, and then you have effigy mounds. And the effigy mounds are in the shapes of things. Down in Fayette, Ohio, there was a mound complex that, I forget his name, but someone went down there from the Smithsonian and actually drew it up and, made a map of it. When he did that, he found out that the mound complex was in the shape of a menorah and an oil lamp. And this is huge. I mean, these are huge mound complexes in the shape of a menorah and an oil lamp. That's Hebrew. Okay. Now, you can go on Google right now and you can't see it because they actually plowed over it. But the field next to it, if it's in Fayette, Ohio, at the corner of Route 15, I think 30 or something like that. I can't remember exact, but it's 15 and 130 or something like that. If you look at Google Maps, you see these ditches. The ditches are in the shape of a Hebrew letter that they call Sheen. And it's right next to where that mound complex was because they had to dig out the dirt to build these mounds. but they digged it out and made these big ditches in the shape of a Hebrew letter called Sheen. Now, going down to Tennessee, Back Creek, Tennessee, there was a archaeologist down there that found a stone with Hebrew writing on it also. They took it to the museum and they said, oh, that's Native American writing. That's so beautiful. So they put it in the museum. And one day someone's walking through the museum and they're like, well, why is that stone upside down? And they're like, what are you talking about?
Oh,
he says, it's upside down. That's Hebrew writing. They flipped it over. And it's, I forget the words. Oh man, I should have had my notes in front of me. But it's something like in the beginning or something like that. It's just a little bit of a big. It was
upside down the whole time.
Yeah, they thought it was Indian carving, the Native American writing. And this scholar from, Israel or whatever, he's like, no, it's upside down. So they flipped it over. He's like, see, it means in the beginning or something like that. Now, the mound complexes in Ohio, we have the Serpent Mound, which I can go into.
I saw that on Earth. They talked about that. Yeah.
To me, and I haven't really talked to many people about this, but to me, it doesn't look like a serpent. To me, it looks like a sperm. Because you have the wiggles like a sperm would do. And then at the head of it, they said, well, the serpent is eating an egg, but it doesn't look right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that.
The head of if you look at a sperm, it's the same shape as the head of that, but they have it where it's holding what they call the egg. And as we know, the sperm goes into the egg, and it could actually, mean eating the egg.
All right, but okay, wait a minute. So if you're talking about the 1800s when they found it, right? So when do they date this thing back to?
They don't know. Now they're talking about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 years.
All right, so how do them motherfuckers know what a sperm looked like?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Now,
that's one of the first things.
Okay, so let's go back to Newark, Ohio. Newark, Ohio, there is the Great Circle Mound, which is a 1,500-acre mound. It's a giant circle right in the middle of the city. Newark, Ohio used to be a whole mound complex, and as they built it up, they tore the mounds out and stuff. And back in the 1800s, when they found what they call the Octagon Mound, and it's all part of the big complex. So you have the Great Circle Mound, and then about a mile away, you have the Octagon Mound. When they found that, they didn't want to let people build stuff on it. So they turned it into a golf course. So right now it's a golf course because once they built the golf course, they couldn't build any houses on it and all that. So it preserved it.
That's how they ended up protecting it, was make it a golf course.
So
hey, it works.
The Octagon Mound and the Newark Holy Stones and the Back Creek Stone and there's carvings up in Michigan in a cave that's a menorah and stuff. But talking back about Newark and talking about Egypt and the pyramids, now the Octagon Mound looks like a stop sign, basically. Okay,
sure. Hence Octagon.
The point of it, where it opens up and goes into the smaller circle mound, if you take that angle and look at the angle of that to true north, it's 15, I'm going to say 15 degrees, which is the exact same degrees as the pyramids. Okay. Now, the Great Pyramid, the big one, if you took and picked that up and moved it over to Newark, Ohio, and dropped it into the Octagon Mound, no matter which way you turn it, and the Great Pyramid, by the way, is not 4-sided, it's 8-sided. Okay. Because the walls the walls curve in a little bit. Okay.
Oh shit.
So
okay.
The octagon has 8 points in it. And no matter where you put that pyramid, it's going to fit exactly in those points. Okay. So it's the exact same size. The diameter of the circle mound is the exact same size as the radius of the pyramid. The angle of the pyramid or the angle of the walkway, basically, out of the octagon mound is the same as the sides of the pyramid. Okay. Now, the octagon mound is also each point in the octagon mound. What it is was, it's looks like a circle, but it's not. It's octagon. And each one of those points represents an 18-year cycle of the moon. So when they designed this, they had to go, okay, we're going to wait 18 years. Okay, there it is. Put the dot there. And then he moved and put the dot there. But it all met up with.
Wait a minute. So every 18 years, they're like, okay, dot. We got to wait another 18 years.
Yep.
Dot. Mm-hmm. So they went 8 cycles of 18 years to make this.
Basically. Or they knew somehow where they were.
Sure. Okay. Did some math or something, right?
Mm-hmm. So in representative of the pyramid to the octagon mound in Ohio, it's the same measurements exactly.
How the fuck? So, okay, so that goes beyond coincidence.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way that that's coincidence.
Mm-hmm. I know. So you have that. You've got the Holy Stones. You've got the Back Creek Stone. You've got the carvings up in Michigan. You've got the stones in woods that they found with Hebrew writing on them. To me, I believe that the lost tribe of the Israelites came to the United States and settled in this area. And that's why we're finding these things.
Okay, so wait a minute. Where's the 12-foot giant come in?
Well, the thing is, I think they were giants. I think they were. We're talking. I think so. And we have found evidence of giants all over the world.
Yeah.
My friend Heather Arnold right now, who lives in Aruba, she does a lot of studies on the giants. And in Aruba, they don't have the Smithsonian, which took all the bones away. They still have the history. Her grandmother was a giant. Her grandmother was 8 feet tall, I think.
God, that's a big
one.
Yeah.
So also in Ohio here, where I'm sitting in Toledo, 4 miles that way, out my window there, is the Maumee River. And on the Maumee River, down to where the mouth of the river goes into Lake Erie, is where they call the Toledo Yacht Club. And then next to the yacht club is the Coast Guard station. I don't remember the year, but back in the day, they found skeletons in between those two buildings, basically in that spot. The buildings weren't there yet, but in that spot. And they were the ones with the double rows of teeth. They were the giants with the double rows of teeth.
What do you mean, like a shark?
Yeah. As if we're sitting here right now with our teeth, and like mine that are wired together here are a double set where there was another set behind them.
No shit.
They found those. And when they found those in the Toledo, I read the article in the Toledo Gazette, it said that the skeletons were the skulls were so big, you could take the jawbone and put it over your own head and it would fit like a hat or a helmet.
How tall were they?
Those were probably around 9 feet, but they were big. Like their heads were big. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, like a troll.
Mm-hmm. Now, down the Maumee towards Maumee, Ohio, which is about, I'd say, 6 to 12 miles, maybe 12 miles down the river.
Mm-hmm.
There was an island there, and they found skeletons on that island, but they were the giants that had 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Well,
so there's different species. Okay. And you'll see on cave drawings of Native American cave drawing, or not Native American, what am I saying? Like Neanderthal, all that drawings, and maybe some Native American drawings. Because now that I think about it, I've seen them out in Arizona, where you see where they put their hand on the wall and they paint around it.
Yeah. They had 6 fingers.
They had 6 fingers on there. Yeah. You'll find those.
That's fucking crazy.
We're different species.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, and then you got, through evolution, right? Mm-hmm. So to be successful, you got to fail 1,000 times. Yeah. So here we go. Let's make somebody 12 foot tall with double rows of teeth, or 8 foot tall with this monstrous head.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So the body doesn't obviously can't handle that. And then just goes through evolution after evolution after evolution. And now look, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
This size head, this size body. Because look at even closer in history. Look at back in 1800s and even in the first 1900s. We were little tiny people because we couldn't eat anything. There was nothing to eat.
Yeah.
And like George, the fucking guy in the dollar bill, George Washington. Look at his jaw. Look how big his jaw is, right? Because at that time, you were eating so much of your food was raw, not cooked. So now you have to have this massive jaw to crunch away at things. Now look at our jaws. They're all small and things because we cook everything. Yeah. And that's evolutionary traits over 200, 300 years, maybe 400 years. Imagine millions of years or, 15,000 years. Oh my God, dude. I have no.
Huh? We talk about a lot of people say, well, there can't be giants. They're too tall. They're all this. But then the dinosaurs were big because they had a lot of oxygen in the air.
Oh,
and they grew more.
Oh, that's a good.
How do we know that when the giants were around, they just didn't grow bigger? And like you were saying, you had to adapt to your environment, and there's stories of the red-haired giants, which are cannibals that the Native Americans killed off. And there's stories about, don't go up on the hill because the big men live up there, or the Sakidai or whatever they called them. And they're the red-haired giants. And there's evidence in that in what they call Lovelock Cave. If you look up the story of Lovelock Cave, there was a red-haired giant that the Native Americans forced into this cave because he lived there, and they would go in, they'd find bones of human, so they're saying they're cannibals. They actually forced him in there, and they burnt the entrance to the cave and actually killed him in there. And some legends say that they found the bones in Lovelock Cave.
And when you're talking a giant like 8-12 feet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
there's stories after stories after stories of newspaper articles and all that of giants and Indian burial mounds with giant skeletons in them. So one of my other beliefs is that the Native Americans didn't make the mounds, because it goes back to the holy stones and all that. And even in the Bible, it says that one of the verses is they built them on high places, mounds in all their cities. So they would actually use the mounds as their preaching stands, or their courts, or where they teach people, or they gather.
Sure, that makes sense.
All the cities, and even today, if you go over to Israel, there's mounds in the cities.
Yeah, sure. I could see that.
They're the same shapes and stuff. So my belief is that the Native Americans didn't make the mounds. Because they've even said that they didn't make the mounds, their ancestors did. Well, who were their ancestors?
Right.
And I believe that they just used them as burial mounds, because there are Native American burials in the mounds. That's, there's one down in Ohio here, in Miamisburg, Ohio. When they started digging into that, they found so many skeletons, they stopped digging, and now you can go actually walk up on top of it and stuff.
But the skeletons they found were
Native American
sizes like you and I, not giants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now they have found a lot of giants in the mounds. There's a lot of stories of the mounds that they took out, because, like I said, there used to be over 10,000 mounds in the United States, and most of them were just turned into cities and stuff.
Sure, yeah, for the good of man, right? But I don't think, my mind went. I think we talked about it before we started recording, or right as we started recording. You brought up giants, right? And my 300 ring circus of imagination went right to like King Kong and that giants like that. But now when you're talking about the giants that you discuss, it's not far-fetched to me that a person of a species, again, 12 foot tall, 8 foot tall with a huge fucking head. I just think it was evolution kind of putting its toe in the water, going, "Hey, wonder if this will work." Okay, then the ice, and then the ice age, and then that happens, and it retracts, and all of a sudden, okay, the climate is this, and the landscape is this. Well, this is what the body needs to do to, to survive. Well, then the climate changes. Far, I know that's hard for some people to grasp, but the climate changes all the time.
Yeah.
And all this bullshit about climate change now, no matter what we do, the climate's going to change.
Yeah.
Do we have an impact? Sure.
No,
we could get into that discussion, but I think that the earth is billions of years old, dude. The climate's fucking always changing.
Yeah.
What do you think that your measly 80 years on this earth is going to have an impact on what's going on? Get the fuck out of here.
And think about this too. Every single religion has a flood story. Whether it's Noah or every religion has a flood story. Now, the reason Noah was told to build the ark and all that because of the Nephilim, which are the fallen angels that came down, mated with the humanoids, and made their offspring were the giants called the Nephilim. Okay, and that goes back also Israelites and all that. Every religion has a flood story, and with Noah, God killed all the Nephilim on the world. So basically, God killed off all the giants.
Right, because Noah didn't take it on the earth or on the boat, right? So
now, if you look at the age of the flood stories, they all come back to around 12,000 years ago, which is the same time that we believe that the asteroid came down, blew up over the ice cap, and made a giant flood.
I could see that. I like the science behind that. And then it's a little off track, but I got to tell you this story real quick about you say every religion has a flood story, right? So I practiced martial arts for a long time, and I had to write a thesis, 2 theses a year, to maintain the level that I was at. And my instructor would give me one, and then I would pick one, right, topic. And one year I picked, I took 6 religions from around the world, right?
Okay.
And I went through their quote unquote 10 commandments, because they all have some kind of commandment, right?
Yeah.
As we look at it as the Christian type commandment. And I broke them down, and my exit phrase was, don't be a dick. If you look at all the commandments, all of any religion, you can be like, well, you're just being an asshole. Yeah. Just don't be an asshole. So anyway, a little sidetrack, because you said that every religion had a flood story. I was like, oh man, I remember that. I got some grief, and I went and interviewed people and stuff that were in the religion. I said, hey, what do you think this means? And I put my due diligence in, but that's part of it. But I like the not the coincidence of each of these religions are off the same thing. Okay, it's going back to having these cave drawings or these sculptures being the same thing all over the world, right? So that just gives evidence of one huge event, and every group went, hey, I'm going to spin this the way we think. Yeah.
Their beliefs, their God. Their beliefs. Spited them, and
Yep. But in all turn, the universe chucked a huge rock onto our stone that we live on, and created some shit, right?
That's one of the beliefs, yeah.
Dude,
we talk about like Grant Hancock and his theories, and that's what he believes is, and he's done a lot of research into it. Him and another guy, I can't remember his name, but they show that around the world, and especially here in the United States, because that's what they focus on, there are giant waterfalls that we just say, oh no, that's a mountain. They show that it's in the same shape as like Niagara Falls, but Niagara Falls would be one little tiny bit of it. And there's, I can't remember where they're at, but out west, there's giant fields. Okay. And if you pan back, it looks like ripples at the bottom of a creek. It's the exact same thing. Okay. And there's a lot of these cliffs that have, like, they're waterfalls, but they have where you can go underneath and go into the hill. Well, they're huge, and the only way that can happen is a lot of water, not just that one little waterfall that's there.
Right.
It's got to be a giant waterfall that causes backwash that wipes out underneath there. And I forget the name of it, but if you look at it, you see like an overhang. And they find these all over the United States.
Let alone the world, right?
Yeah. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, look up Graham Hancock.
Graham Hancock. All right.
Look it up. Great thing is Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan is a great one, because Joe Rogan loves to get into that stuff.
Yeah, he loves that kind of stuff too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just think that going back with the giants, right? It's look how old the earth is. And we as humans, I believe, think in centuries or even a millennial, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't even come. That's not. I had was it Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think, said, if you want a idea how old the earth is, right? Compare it to our calendar year, January 1 to December 31st.
Yeah.
We as humans know the earth as of December 31st, 11:57 and 45 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And I went, oh my God, that just kind of gives you an idea. Like, all this shit happened. Like, you're talking about these huge ripples that was probably a creek that was moving water at one time. That's the only way that stuff happens, is water moves over it and does it, right? So did that happen 4 billion years ago? 1 million years ago? Right? So I don't think that we can, without sitting and having a conversation like we are, if you're just rolling around in your own dome, it's hard to comprehend how old the earth is.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the shit that happened, that we're just going to be this little tick in the scale of time for the earth, right? I had this, the earth would be like, I had this flea for a second. I don't know even what it was before I realized that they were gone. Right. I mean, but yeah, it's so you talk about the different giants and the way that the waterfalls and these, even like the pyramids going and fitting in something in Illinois and is it, am I right? Illinois?
Ohio.
Ohio. I'm sorry. Ohio. Just all this stuff. I don't think we try to fit it in the way that we think in what we know, right? There's just fucking no way that we know all that stuff. So I know you got guys like you that go, hey man, all this shit comes together. And you're like, wait a minute. Let me think about that for a second. Yeah. And it's just, I love that kind of stuff. I like thinking about it because it just brings your mortality into thought, you know? Yeah. And I feel that things are super interesting and beautiful and that type of thing because of our mortality. Right? If I knew I was going to live for 500 years, it's like eating Cheerios every day. Right?
Yeah.
Just like, what fun is that? Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Joe, again, man, I could yell at you for a long time. I gotta have you back on, or we got to figure something out, because I got to pick your brain about ghost stories and Bigfoot.
Yeah, we didn't even start talking about that.
Dude,
let's save that for another day.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of stories about ghost stuff and paranormal things that happened to me. Me and my sister have the 222 Paranormal podcast. We travel the country doing ghost hunts and finding stuff and going to conventions and all that. So I've got some good stories for you.
Yeah, I got a couple of personal stories that make me honestly believe that, you know, our energy goes somewhere else when we go. You know, you can't destroy the energy. I think that the energy that came from the sun 4 billion years ago is what's running me. You know, that kind of thing. So
we are star child.
Yeah, we'll
I
save
would
that
love
for.
to have you on. I'd love to have you on my show, and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. All right, man. I'll give you the mic for a second. You already dropped a few lines, but I'm going to holler at where people can find you, and of course, I'll put everything in the notes. But go ahead, man. Let everybody know where to find you.
Yeah. So me and my sister we're the 222 Paranormal Podcast. We cover everything paranormal, from aliens to Bigfoot to ghosts. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast from. If you just type in 222 Paranormal Podcast, you'll find us. Go to our website, 222paranormal.com. There's a play button there. But the best way to find it is just type in on your computer or on your phone, 222 Paranormal Podcast, and it will pop up.
Nice. Joe, awesome time, dude. Oh, man.
Hey, I had a blast.
Oh, I love talking.
It's so nice to have this conversation.
All right, let's get out of here, but hang on just one second. All right. Thanks again, man.
Yep.
Can you imagine what else Joe has rolling around in his dome? We didn't even scratch the surface, but in the show notes is a link to how to get a hold of him. I would bet you he would love to speak with you. All right, man, I'm going to get you out of here because I know you got shit to do, but don't forget my boys over at Live Reese. They make high quality CBD product. And of course, my website, BeRawPodcast.com. And then the link in the show notes is a link to my Etsy store. Would love for you to check that out. All right, man. And hailing you from the state where the city of Grover's Mills back in the day had a live broadcast of War of the Worlds. And everybody thought that was real and they lost their fucking mind. And that's in New Jersey. All right, man. Till next time, be cool. Don't act cool.